You've got questions? Well, we have the man to answer those questions. Jeffrey Levine from Buckingham. Jeffrey, welcome back to another episode of Ask the Hammer.
Good to be with you today, sir.
Good to have you here because I have got a question that I'm guessing maybe the answer is it depends, but we'll find out. Goes like this.
Often the case, right?
It's always the case. So maybe it's like a easy bet for me.
Mm.
I inherited a traditional IRA in 2021 from my sibling who passed in February of 2021 at the age of 76. I was 74 at the time that she passed, making me, I believe, an eligible designated beneficiary. The gist of my question is whether the relief for RMDs for 2021, 2022, and 2023 is meant only for non-eligible designated beneficiaries, or as an eligible designated beneficiary, could I possibly postpone my 2023 RMD to 2024, or even skip it and just take an RMD for 2024 next year?
Whoa, that's a lot of words. That was like a word salad. So let's first take a step back and make sure that everyone who's tuning in understands the question that's being asked. Basically, someone inherited in 2021 after the Secure Act changed the rules for most people, eliminating the stretch. However, this individual who inherited was 74, but the person who passed away was 76, so only a 2-year age difference between them. That technically makes the inheritor what's known as an eligible designated beneficiary, and you can think of it as they are eligible to continue to stretch just as under the old rules were. Now, it seems in this particular case that that person, despite being able to stretch, missed taking their first 2 years of distributions and later went back and took them. And the question is, can they avoid 2023's distribution this year because of recent guidance from the IRS? Well, Bob, this is an area where the first thing I would say is, under the proposed regulations, there were two choices for those individuals. They could either stretch or opt into the 10-year rule. Now, these are just proposed regulations. The IRS still hasn't finalized them yet. But it sounds here, regardless, that this person has chosen, if you will, to go the stretch route, to not use the 10-year rule and to instead say, I'll take it out over my remaining life expectancy as a beneficiary. In those cases, there needs to be an RMD each and every year as a stretch distribution. Now, the guidance that was released earlier this year, referenced by in the question, talked about something that applies to the 10-year rule only, which was, do certain individuals who inherited, who are subject to the 10-year rule, need to take RMDs during that 10 years as well? In other words, instead of just emptying out everything by the end of the 10 years, do they need to take a small amount, at least, in each of those 10 years? The proposed regulations I already referenced said yes, but the IRS has said no, at least up until and through this year. But that only applies to individuals who are using or subject to the 10-year rule. And in this particular case, the fact that they are an eligible designated beneficiary and taking distributions via the stretch, they are not going to benefit from that relief, and a distribution should be taken here in 2023, or should be taken for 2023, I should say, before the end of the year.
Time is running out for that person, but not for 2024 at least.
That's right. 2024, we don't know, and we don't really know what's going to go on with the 10-year rule for 2024. This is one of the problems when you have so much legislation passed in such a short period of time. Don't forget, we had the Tax Cut and Jobs Act passed in 2017 that completely overhauled the tax code, beginning in mostly 2018. By the end of the following year, we had the original Secure Act. Right after that, we went into the pandemic, where not only did the IRS kind of stop working for an extended period of time, or at the very least slowed down, but we also added, on top of the regular slowdown, a whole bunch more new legislation devoted to pandemic relief and all sorts of things. And so guidance for that, for obvious reasons, had to be prioritized, and it left catching up on stuff that the IRS had yet to talk about. That was kind of put to the back burner. And then last year, in 2022, at the end of the year, we had Secure Act 2.0, another major piece of tax legislation that had roughly 100 related tax or retirement changes in it. And all of these things are written in such a way that there's always questions. We always need guidance. We always need the IRS to sort of fill in the gaps and the cracks. And yet so much of it is still sort of up for grabs. We don't know, which makes planning very difficult. And of course, makes things like the question our reader asked a real challenge, because sometimes you go, I don't know, we have to wait for the IRS, but there are deadlines in the interim. So what's a taxpayer to do, Bob?
Well, I guess you already said that they should take the RMD for 2023. If they don't, they'll be subject to the 50% penalty if they don't take the RMD.
Well, maybe. Well, a good news is it won't be a 50% penalty, because that doesn't exist anymore. One of those changes I referenced with that tax legislation cut the 50% penalty down to 25. And if it's timely fixed, it goes to 10%. And there, even if it's just quote unquote 10%, if you apply to the IRS for relief, and there's a good reason, which, hey, I had no idea what was going on because you guys didn't issue, guidance yet. It's probably a pretty good reason. You'll likely get out of that penalty as well, but it just makes everybody's life more complicated. And it does introduce at least the potential for unnecessary penalties. So if we can avoid it for both dollars, but also sanity, much better to do so.
Yeah. I think we can designate this question as being answered. And
I like it. And you are eligible to submit new ones. So feel free, give us a shout, email us at askthehammer@buckinghamgroup.com. Again, that's askthehammer@buckinghamgroup.com. And who knows, maybe you won't have to wait years for your guidance.